Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. Sorry we're running a bit behind. By the time I get to the stream and get it loaded up, these guys are chit-chatting and I have to cut them all off just to go live because we have so much fun talking to each other that, sorry, that was my daughter. Lovely little brat. 15 years old, twins, yuck. Anyhow, hope your week has been fabulous. I am currently sipping on some Chardonnay. Let me know in the comment section what you are sipping on. And hello, Alicia. Hello, Zen Ginger. Hello, Shyla. Just to let you know, it is open chat again. So anything you guys want to talk about, questions, comments, if you want to show your jump in, anything's up for grabs tonight. I wasn't able to get a guest in tonight because it's been a hectic week. I am still in contact with Dr. Tim. Vincent just mentioned that he's got 2 guests that he'd like to bring on. So we're working on guests, but tonight is just open chat. So anything goes. If you're on Instagram, don't forget, feel free to listen to us on my Instagram story. But if you want and actually communicate with us in the comment section, jump on over to YouTube, search Seahorse Whisperer, and we'll be the first one that you see. Also, I'm this much closer to finishing the app. So I'm not about it, but get ready because we're going to have a cool app coming. And that's all I got tonight. I've got Ray, Holly, and Vincent with me tonight. Cheryl had some surgery stuff going on, so she couldn't be here tonight. But Cheryl, if you watch this later, we love you and hope you're doing well. And we'll see you next week. All right. So anything new from anybody before we jump to Holly actually sent me some videos that we discussed last week about the seahorses using the chains, the curtain rods to swing back and forth to food dishes. So we're going to watch that in a minute. And another one of Scrappy Doo's a baby. So we've got some cool footage to watch in a minute. But anything else new with you, Holly?
Not really. I put the old light from the display tank onto my grow out tank, and I've been using that sometimes, but I turn it on and off manually. I don't want to program it. It's just so involved compared to the other light. So I've been using it kind of in addition to the other lighting. Like I turn it on. It's got a setting that's not that bright that I like for during the daytime. So it helps keep from growing algae. And then like right now I have my big fluorescent light on so I can see. So so they've got multi-lighting now. And I'm loving that new light I got for the display tank. It's just a lot easier and there's more I can do with it. So I'm still enjoying that.
Awesome. Sounds
I
good.
figured out how to stop the seahorses from growing algae. I just had to turn down the brightness on the lights when
Yep.
it was new after a few days. The ladies, I thought it was funny because it was just the lady seahorses started growing algae.
Huh. Interesting that it was just the females. But
Yeah,
that's a good tip. That's a good tip for anyone. If your seahorses start growing algae, turn down the brightness. Absolutely. And I know that if you have a tank with corals and such, that makes a big difference. You might just have to deal with it. But if you've got a tank with just softies and or just
mhm.
not fake, but what's the word for fake? I know a nicer word.
Artificial,
Artificial. There we
artificial,
go. If you just have
fake works
artificial
too.
decorations, then you can just turn down the light and they will stop for sure. Well, good. And we'll show your videos in a second, Holly. Ray, anything new with you?
Nope, nothing new.
Ray just comes to help. Oh, and Vincent,
Well,
how
it's
about
hard
you?
to have
What's
something new when you
new with?
found your
Oh,
own seahorse.
I
Yeah,
know, but
true.
we appreciate you coming and answering questions though. So we still value you here. I just always have to ask if anything's new. It could be just with you, not the seahorses. But anyways, Vincent, anything new with you or your seahorses?
No, I'm just feeling a whole lot better. But I do have a story not
Got it.
related to that.
Okay, go
Yesterday,
ahead.
I got my granddaughter off the bus and we were messing around and she found Christine's old perfect condition iPod. And she said, "Can I use that like a phone?" She's 6 years old. And I gave it to her. And we went for a walk. And we're walking down the street and went all the way up and then coming back. And she's pretending she's getting phone calls.
That's cute.
Well, she dropped the phone and she picked it up and dropped it again. And she looked at it or the iPod and shattered
Aw,
in front of it.
No.
And so
bummer.
she knows it's Nana's. And
Oh.
she said, "Don't tell Nana." I said, "But what are we going to do?" And she tells me, and this is her little criminal mind. She said, "We can bury it."
Oh no.
And we could
Love
bury it.
it.
And I told her, "Give it to me." And I said, "Don't say anything." And I kept it in my pocket. But she'll tell because it'll
Yeah.
eat at her. And
Yep.
but yeah, we'll
That's
bury
cute.
it.
That's cute. Shyla has a question in the comments that I'm going to ask real quick, but also don't forget, once the site is up, all these cool shirts that I keep wearing will be available. And this shirt, literally, you guys, that is, I used a graphics program. That is one of my seahorses that I literally converted into an image and by tracing and all that. So if you have any ideas for shirts or you want, to make a personalized shirt or anything like that, get with me. I'd love new graphics for shirt ideas. And of course, if you want your own individualized, let me know. Okay. So first of all, and hey, RG Reef, good to see you. We need to get more reefers in here once in a while. But Shyla wanted to know if any of us have any experience with feather lilies and if they're seahorse safe. I'll be real. I'm going to go with what Ray said. I don't even know what they are.
Yeah, I don't know what they are either.
I haven't
RJ,
heard
RG,
that. Does she mean feather duster worms? Maybe.
yeah, and RG Reef said anemone. Is there a feather duster anemone? I know there's a feather duster worm, and
I know about the worm.
I kept them in my reef tank. I never kept them with seahorses. Let me just look for a minute here.
Oh, they are a thing. RG Reef says they're rare and difficult to keep. Feather
Anything.
lilies.
So I'll be completely honest with you. Anything that is rare and delicate to keep is a no-go, in my opinion. If if there's somebody out there that's done it, cool. But for me, I'm like anything that's like, okay, for instance, with gorgonians, I freaking love gorgonians. And in my first tank, my macro tank, I even had NPS gorgonians. And I know you guys have seen those absolutely amazing NPS seahorse tanks. I see them online. They're gorgeous, but you have to consider, first of all, how long do they stay gorgeous? And second of all, you have to feed those corals. You have to feed NPS. So, when you look at seahorses,
Here they are.
when seahorses, sorry, thank you, Holly, for showing us. Let me make you big real quick to show what we're talking about.
Oh, you're talking
All right.
about them.
It's beautiful, and I'm gonna look it up and do some research myself.
Well, that's
well, apparently it's a feather lily. So
yeah, it came up on the
Oh, yeah.
Incredible Secret Lives of Sea Lilies and Feather Stars. That came up when I looked a crinoid.
well, okay. So, anyways, back to what I was saying. Sorry, I'm trying to do too many things at once. My reasoning for not, okay, I'm going to repeat a little bit, but I did NPS in my first tank with regular gorgonians and etc. and macros galore. That was my tank, and the seahorses were fine. But then the NPS didn't do very well because I was focused on keeping the seahorses healthy, and I didn't want to overwhelm the tank that's already high maintenance because they're such picky or they're such heavy eaters and organics are such an issue that I just personally would not keep anything that's difficult or that has to be fed in a continuous way, like it's dependent on food. Where, like, if you're talking softies, they'll benefit from food, but they don't have to have it. With NPS or anything that requires food, you're talking about more feeding in a tank you're already concerned with organics. So if you're going to do something like that, I would say make it a huge tank. Ray, do you have anything to add to what I'm saying, or do you agree, disagree?
I'd be worried about having to feed it.
Yeah.
Anything that you have to feed beyond seahorses is going to make it more difficult to maintain the water quality that you need. Not impossible. It just means that you're going to have to be prepared to do the extra work, put the extra effort into it to be sure. Otherwise, down the road, and it may just be a slow degradation, but sooner or later you're going to be in trouble, or your seahorses will be.
Right, and I was going to say we need to get our Fido friends back in here. What was the name of the company, Vincent, that we had on a few weeks? Dinkins. Sorry, Dinkins. I'm so bad with names, but we need to get them back in here, maybe to talk a little bit more. We talked about it on that episode, so go back and watch the episode with Dinkins, because I think I asked a few of these questions. But when you're talking about anything that needs food like that, they say Fido actually can help a tank. Many people dose Fido to their tanks and copepods anyways. So, it's just, yeah. And RG Reef said they mostly feed off of microfood. So they would feed off the the
It says they eat waste and plankton. I'm reading.
Basically anything that's in the water column.
Yeah.
But they're difficult to keep alive, and most people shouldn't even try it.
Gotcha. And I know I'm looking.
They eat plankton and waste, which is microscopic plants and animals drifting in the water, like we were talking about.
And isn't that what feather dusters eat too? Because feather dusters
sounds similar, yeah.
They just might be more difficult to keep alive.
Sea lilies, feather stars.
She says she saw on Instagram her having it with her seahorses and mackerel, but it may look good at the time the Instagram was posted, but you have no idea how long it's lasted after that. Either that still alive, or did the extra contamination kill off the seahorses?
Well, and I like what you said earlier, Ray, is almost anything can be accomplished. You can do almost anything in a seahorse tank. It just depends on, are you talking about a 30-gallon seahorse tank with a pair? And I am very minimalistic. You got to be careful. If you're talking about a 100-gallon seahorse tank, then there's a lot more options. You have more water volume to keep, more chance to keep the water clean, and etc. But there's just so many different conditions. How big's the tank? What's the filtration? What are you running? What are you having rock? Blah blah blah. What's the lighting? Everything matters when you're talking about a question like that. But looks like RG Reef said they're almost impossible to keep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But didn't they say that about the I'm so bad with names, you guys. What are the little, oh my gosh, I want to say they're called like apple snails or something. Oh my gosh.
The apples.
I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it. There was something I really wanted to keep in my tank, but it was just too difficult. Yeah, it is a sea apple. That is what I'm talking about. And they used to be supposedly so difficult to keep, and now I see them all over. Again, we go back to what Ray said. Anytime you see a beautiful tank, the first question should be, how long has it been up? Yeah. How long have you been keeping these creatures together? And then come back in 6 months to a year and see if they're still doing well. But anything can be accomplished if you're willing to do the research, set up and then, observe, make sure things are going well, and be ready to make changes if you have to. So, hey, Seahorse Corner. And RG Reef said for that invert, you need 180 gallons or more for sea apples. Okay, so see the tanks that you said, I see them in the tanks all the time, but I didn't realize they were huge tanks. You can't tell from a picture, right? So, good points. Yes, right. Sorry.
Okay, in addition to not knowing, when you see pictures of something or videos of something, not knowing how long it's been set up, even if you know, and there's been proof that somebody has set up something that is basically taboo, if they've had it set up for 5 or 6 years and you know for sure that it's been that way, don't accept that just anybody can do it. There may be some extenuating circumstances. Maybe the seahorses that are in that tank are very resistant to disease with their immune system. So many different things can be there, or maybe they just know how they were able to manage it, and the average person isn't going to. So just because you can see it done, don't just automatically accept that it's going to be doable for you.
Absolutely. And folks, when my screen goes black like this, I'm probably dealing with kids, but I'm still here always. I've got my AirPods in. And Holly, any other thoughts on this topic?
No, not really. I don't have any experience with them, So, but most things I'd say that are like that, that are kind of exotic,
Yeah.
they're harder to keep like that. I generally don't do it with the seahorses.
Right, because the seahorses are,
They're
we
my
try to tell people,
priority.
right, and we try to tell people seahorses aren't hard to keep if you set up well, but it is a specific, and if you're already trying to set up perfect for them, then, trying to accommodate something else that's difficult could be problematic, right? So, Vincent, any
Yeah, if
thoughts?
something else, messes up and it dies and it pollutes the tank and, that kind of thing.
Yep. Vincent, any other thoughts on this?
No, I mean, I wouldn't keep them. Just for some stuff shouldn't even be collected. I mean,
Right.
because most
No,
people
I agree.
don't have success. Feather stars
Yeah.
are one of them.
Like ghost pipefish, not ghost pipefish, but the drag. Gosh, I'm doing bad with my names tonight. Oh my gosh, what is the dragon looking pipefish?
Oh,
Is it a ghost?
weedy
No.
dragon.
No. Anyway, I can't remember. I'm not going to dwell on that. But I would say also, and I want your guys' opinion on this, that we do need people to kind of press the barriers. I agree with what Vincent said, something shouldn't be, but they said that about seahorses, right? I mean, they said seahorses can't be kept in aquariums. They just can't. And here we are proving that they can easily because of all the years of people's experience. Go ahead.
What happens is when they, it's not as bad now because they're not collecting as much. But years ago, they collected just about anything under the sun. And
Right.
they put it out there on the market. And they were selling them cheap. And people just killing them all the time. I mean, there's certain people that can do anything. And,
Right.
And those people tend to have a connection to where if they want it, they can get it. But for the everyday market, some things should not be in your average local
I agree.
store. I mean, it's just because survival is going to be very slim.
Right. Well, and you bring up another good point that when you're talking about these more delicate creatures, it definitely does depend on your experience level. If you've worked with aquariums, if you've worked with water, if you understand why water quality matters and the cycles and etc., that makes a big difference too. But I just meant that in the big scheme of things, we need people who do have that experience to push the barriers, because like if May and Cheryl and etc. hadn't pressed the barriers with seahorses and figured it out, we wouldn't have it so easy today. So I don't know.
I
There's two
think you
sides.
should kind of work on getting there gradually, like maybe start a general reef tank first and practice keeping, corals and things. Start with the easy ones, work your way up to harder and harder things as you gain more experience and more confidence in yourself with it. Rather than starting with something that's super hard to keep.
I love it. And Holly, that's what I'm saying. So anybody who wants to do that, set up a reef tank and then set up a seahorse tank. You can always move things later once you figure both out. But, keep them. I like that idea. Zen Ginger wants to know. So if I go with a 125 gallon tank with 3 to 4 horsies, I love horsies, a mandarin, and gorgonians, is there a suitable schooling fish that I could get, say 6 to 12 of, to swim in the water column? And she's
especially if you're talking in the 12 range, that's not going to leave a lot of room left for seahorses, even in a 125.
Really?
Well, she's not going to have that many seahorses.
Well, I thought
Right.
I saw him.
But then 12 fish competing with 4 seahorses or whatever, I think it was a low number.
3 to 4.
Yeah,
She said
3 to 4.
seahorses.
Might have trouble competing for food. But one of my favorite fish are for schooling is the pajama cardinal. I've never
Well, and
kept them with seahorses.
Well, and she said, I remember you guys talked about the Cardinals last week, but
I know the Bengay cardinal, but I don't think you keep schooling cardinals. Usually the folks that have them that I've seen just have just one.
they're a schooling fish.
Yeah, I have
Cardinals.
4 of them in my.
And you have a bunch?
And and I have a pair that constantly have eggs, and the male's always carrying the eggs and stuff,
Oh, cool.
and absolutely messes with nothing. I mean, they don't bother anything. They might.
So can you keep a few of them with seahorses then?
Well, I
Like
don't keep fish with seahorses, so I haven't tried it. But I know some cardinals are okay with. I mean, if you can keep some clowns with a seahorse, you can definitely keep a pajama cardinal.
Where is? Okay, I'm gonna grab my phone here because here's my thoughts, Zen Ginger. I understand you want things in the 125 divided by 30. All right. Oh yeah,
shoaling
that's still only 4
gobies. I
seahorses.
haven't heard of those. So yeah,
Yep.
maybe those up and see what those are.
You got to understand that all of us in here are people that usually don't mix seahorses with fish. We're not saying it's
Yeah.
wrong. The key things to when you're researching a fish you want to keep with seahorses is, can they handle the lower temperatures? That's number period, because you have to keep the temperatures lower. Are they aggressive, or are they aggressive eaters, right? It's kind of the same with coral. Do they sting? And what else, guys? Temperature, feeding habits. What
Fast
else?
movements.
Well, yeah. I'm sorry. When I say aggressive, I don't mean just in eating. I mean, like, are they zipping around the tank? Because seahorses can't even turn their heads, so they're like, they can't even follow them. What?
Alyssa sells those. It says peaceful fish friendly to keep with captive bred seahorses. The shoaling masked goby.
Yeah, but don't gobies
They're
usually
kind of
say
pretty
towards
little
the
fish. So that's what they look like.
very cute?
They
And
look
Alyssa
little.
Seahorse Savvy is a great reference. But if you're just wanting a little fish like that just to have some movement in the tank. But here's my point, and I'm just gonna make it because I got to. In my 65, all I had was gorgonians, seahorses, and snails. But the seahorses with the gorgonians, the seahorses are in the middle or the top of the water column, at least in my experience. I know it depends on the seahorses you get and all that. But you look at Vincent's tank, I know his tank has a lot of adolescents, but you look at any of the tanks with just seahorses and can be active, and they're the attraction in the tank. So I think with 4, you're going to have them chasing each other. I don't know. I understand wanting more.
Myself,
They only get to be an inch or 2 full grown, and they generally tend to be out in the open swimming around. They
Right, that's what
sometimes
she wants.
reside on the docks, but generally they're swimming around. They says they have great personalities. They're active and peaceful, and can be kept with seahorses. They can be kept singly, paired, or in a group.
Yep, very cool. That's a good idea.
That sounds like a choice, a possibility.
It does. Just for me, I think if I'm thinking, Zen Ginger, I don't know exactly what your ideal picture of your tank is. But for me, when you're asking that question, if I was setting up a seahorse tank and I wanted movement in the tank, I wouldn't want a little teeny tiny fish. You know what I mean? I'd want something bigger that
They
interact.
kind
I
of
don't know.
remind me of one of those tetras or danios,
Yeah.
in a freshwater tank.
Yep. I never cared for those. Sorry. Even in freshwater. Go ahead, Vincent.
But in that size tank, 125, I would have more than 4 seahorses.
I would too.
And
I was
especially
going
if I had a sump and good filtration,
that's it.
I would definitely put more seahorses in it, which would give you more activity among the seahorses, because 4 seahorses in a 125 going to get lost.
Well,
Yeah.
you just made an excellent point though. When we say 30 gallons per pair, right? Because that's the requirement. If you have a sump, that adds water volume. So if you have 125 with a 55 gallon or 60 gallon, whatever sump with filtration in
That's
it,
a lot of water.
then you have more room for more seahorses. Even though the tank's not bigger, the water volume goes up. So I would definitely keep more than 4 too, myself. I think when you asked that a question originally, we weren't really talking about whether or not you had a sump, but okay. But yeah. Sorry, I got to get rid of this spammer. Okay. Anyways, sorry, that distracted me. Yeah, let us know, do you plan and what filtration you plan to have in it. I know you're just planning at this stage. We can't wait till you get set up. But and she RG Reef said that those are a great dither fish to showcase the seahorses if you're going to do fish. Good. Yeah, okay. I mean, let's see a tank with it. I love the idea. If Alyssa says it's good, it's good. I was just giving my own personal opinion. But and Zen Ginger said, might not even decide on other fish, but desperately want at least one mandarin, and I like to plan ahead. Bravo, plan ahead, research for dang sure. And with mandarin, I know Holly, you just kept one, right?
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
think it'd be interesting in that
I
big of a
have a
tank.
friend that has a breeding pair now. I mean, it can
That's
be done, but it's difficult, I think, to find two that get along unless you get them together. They're already getting along, a pair.
I would
so
think
male and female don't get along.
Not necessarily from what I've heard. They choose each other, and if they don't choose each other, they try to kill each other. So,
Yeah, but in that big of a tank, go ahead, Vincent.
I would think a firefish, a couple of firefish would also probably be okay. They're not very aggressive, and I have a pair, and but they live underneath the rocks and only come out to eat now. But yeah, but not with seahorses. But they're a pretty mellow fish too.
Well, and quick thought, just for us to all consider, going back to what Ray said about aggressive isn't just necessarily feeding. Aggressive can mean darting around the tank.
Yeah.
So maybe I would aim for more slower moving fish. The mandarin are great. Maybe the firefish, they don't zip around.
No, they just kind of they got that nice fin and just kind of.
So RG Reef said that the God, I forgot their name already. The give me a second. What was the name of the fish?
shoaling mask goby.
Thank you,
I'm
Holly.
looking it up right now.
You said that they were a great dither fish. What exactly does dither mean? Because I'm not sure. Because Ray, wouldn't you say keep slower moving fish with seahorses or?
Yeah, I would prefer, if I was going to do it, which I wouldn't, but I would definitely go for the slower movers. And like Heather says, the firefish are jumpers. I had a hell of a time all the time. I even put egg crate over the top, and they would still get out those small holes of the egg crate.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I've been lucky.
Oh.
I've been lucky. I've had mine for a year and a half, and no top on it or anything, and they don't never jump. But they stay down towards the bottom and only come about midway.
RG Reef said dither means background fish. Thank you, sir.
That's what I was thinking, just not the main attraction. Like
Right. And that would make sense for, having a smaller fish that's just for movement. But are they fast? Do they zip around? Because I'm thinking tetras and danios and they zip, They don't all the time, but they can.
Or maybe it'd be one of those things you add later on after the seahorses are well established and
Comfy.
comfortable in the tank, so they feel like they're the king of the tank, and then they won't care as much.
And Zen Ginger said she's never kept a sump with all, but all the decent saltwater tanks have them. So let's talk just very briefly about sumps and why they are so great. Ray, you start us off.
Sorry, what was that?
Why are sumps good? Why should people keep sumps in a seahorse tank?
Well, first, the most important thing is it increases water volume, makes the tank more forgiving. Now, maybe in a freshwater tank, they've never needed it. I never had a sump with in my freshwater tanks, and that was for 50 odd years. And I didn't have any problems there. I would have specific problems with maybe the type of fish that I was trying to keep at some time, and was stupid back then and trying to keep fish without knowing what kind of habitat they really needed to be in. I figured, well,
Right.
if you can keep this kind of fish here, then I can put any other fish in there. I can keep them too. But that's when I was young and stupid.
Well,
See, I always look at it this way. I know now that the older I got, the smarter my dad appeared to be.
I love it. Love it. But Vincent, why else is a sump a good idea?
Well, I mean, it's a good way to have filter socks or some kind of filter to take out the stuff
Particulate
floating around
matter.
in the tank. It's a place to hide all your equipment, your skimmer, everything is you can put inside the sump. It's an easier way to get flow without having power heads in your aquarium. I mean, there's just so many reasons to have a sump. Plus, like Ray said, the extra water volume.
Well, and you just nailed a good point, is that we absolutely recommend any Seahorse tank to have a skimmer. And I haven't had any luck with hang on back skimmers. I have never had good luck with a skimmer that wasn't in a sump. So I hope you do lean that way. But Holly, anything else to add on that? On sumps?
Yeah, it just gives you a place to put all your filtration equipment and other stuff and give extra water, all the things everybody else already said. I mean, personally, I started my tank with a sump that was too small because it was a freshwater sump. When I got my tank, it was handed down to me, and he had fresh water. And the sump, I want to say it was made 5 gallons, probably not even 5 gallons,
Oh,
probably
wow.
more like 3. And I had a hang on back skimmer. And just once I added the sump, it was just so much better and so much easier. And yeah,
Depending on what you decide to keep in your sump, it makes taking care of the display tank so much easier too.
Well, and you get
Go ahead.
better oxygen exchange too.
You
With
get better what?
the oxygen exchange, gas exchange with a sump. And at least I think you feel you do. And
No, I agree. I agree. And I'll tell you this little quick story is I've talked about this before. My first tank was a 29-gallon that I threw 4 seahorses in and a crap ton of macroalgae, and it did not have a sump. And within a year, I had 1 seahorse that had gas bubble disease, pouch. No, not gas bubble disease. I'm sorry. Pouch emphysema. I always mix them up in my head. But 1 male that had pouch emphysema. I didn't lose him, but it was awful. And I immediately ended up adding on a sump. I made it for about a year, but then, and I do attribute that success to macros helping me with the water filtration and huge water changes. But I ended up adding on a sump, and in that sump, Ronald Chinners made me an algae scrubber, like custom made for that tank, for that sump. And that algae scrubber and the skimmer that I added into this sump and everything else that I put in the sump made a world of difference. I had so many problems in that first year, from, just cyano to diatoms to dinoflagellates to, seahorse getting sick. And then when I added the sump, things got a lot better. They ended up having babies after I added on a sump. And then I ended up, well, actually they were having babies before, but anyways, my point is everything got a lot better after I added the sump. And then once I had success with babies and needed more room, I moved up to a bigger tank. But I kept that 30-gallon going with the sump was bigger than the tank, you guys. and it was a pain to add on because it wasn't a drilled tank, obviously, but it helped so much. So, and Ray said you never had a skimmer that fit a tank, let alone a sump. Right, Ray, but we've seen your skimmers. They go up the wall, you crazy man. I'll put a link to Ray's sump in the comments. Sorry, can't do 2 things at once apparently
a
tonight.
skimmer.
Anyway, yeah, Anyways, yeah, no, definitely would say go with sump if you can. And it'll make your life a whole lot easier. And I just love that Zen Ginger is that you're like researching and determining what to do ahead of time instead of just throwing it together. Because like my example, I threw it together and it only lasted a year, and I was in up over my head, had to add things, had to add a sump, ended up needing a bigger tank. So it's good that you're starting with a bigger tank. Hopefully you'll add a sump, and you know, and filtration too. I mean, you can't do as much filtration without a sump, right? I mean, period. Like Dan recommends mechanical and biological filtration in the sump. So anybody? I'm just rambling on and on.
For my sumps, they're always just a tank. I never put a bunch of baffles in. Some of the used ones that I bought had one baffle in, but like I've got a 40-gallon sump that I had under the 90 that had a baffle at one end, about separated into about 1/4, 3/4. But other than that, the ones that I put myself, my 20-gallon sumps, nothing in them at all, because all I wanted them for was the extra volume plus the place to put the live rock, because when I put the live rock in the tank, it made the seahorses go too dark.
Gotcha. I like to put stuff in it, but like the sump that I added on to the 29-gallon, because I had the algae scrubber made specially for it by Ronald Jones. And there's a video about that somewhere. But anyways, it didn't have baffles either. It was literally a 40-gallon breeder, and it had the algae scrubber. I'm looking at it because 65. It had the algae scrubber. And I put rock under. It was a specialized algae scrubber, so I'm just telling you what I did, but you probably couldn't with the typical one. The way this was made, it had a chamber underneath, and so I had rubble under there. I had the algae scrubber, which had two scrubbers or sheets, and then a huge skimmer, like rated 5 times the tank, ridiculous, but it helped, in the middle, and then pump to return the water in that one. I've done different things. Refugiums are fun. You know, there's so many things you can do. And Zen Ginger said a longer tank is typically better for a sump. So would a 20-gallon long or a 29-gallon make a better option? 125s aren't the deepest tank, so I don't think a 40 would fit in the stand. And
I don't have my sumps in the stand. Your sump, if it works out, does not have to be under the tank. It can be next to it. Mine are actually catty corner to the tank, like this. I have, like, in my display tank, the setup's like an L shape. They're corner like this.
Yep.
Because the sumps are too big to fit in the stand that came with that tank. My other tank is not even on a regular stand. My husband made me one out of an old metal desk.
Oh, nice. That's how my 90 is. Yeah.
And so I have the sump in a separate stand, which is an actual console table we bought online, and the sump sits in there. I bought that especially for the sump. And then I have a curtain that pulls across the front of each of the sump stands, so to hide it. And that works good, because what I found out when I did have the little sump actually fit in the stand, it was underneath the tank, but I had a heck of a time trying to get in there and work on anything, because the stand's like a cabinet with doors and everything.
Yeah.
And you're trying to reach under there and see stuff. And now my sumps are out in the open. There's a lot of space for me to work. And I like that, because you have to get in there to change your filter socks, to empty the skimmer cup, and you don't want to be fighting to get to it. Honestly.
Absolutely. And Ray mentioned that all of his were 55s under his 90s. I would say the bigger you can go with a sump, the better off you're going to be, period. And hi, Jamie. And Seahorse Corner said her 125 has a 40-gallon. used to have a 29, would not go smaller than that for a 125. A 55 would be awesome. Absolutely. And you can just do more. You know, you got more room for more water and more things you can put in there and etc. Holly, do you have a picture of your setup that we could show that you could send me real
I
quick? Or
I do. I can't send it to you quick because I have so many pictures. But
right.
I can by next week.
All right.
I can
Well,
send you some because I do have. While we're talking, I can look and see if I can find it because I bet I have an album with it. But
yeah, I
I'll
was
check.
gonna.
Maybe I'll have it in a bit.
Okay, sounds good. And I was gonna say I'll take a picture by next week. I got to clean it up, y'all. But I'll take a picture by next week. My stand is not under the tank either. My stand or my sump, excuse me, is not under the tank either. It sits like literally in front of it, which I would not advise that because it's just ugly and people can see it. So I like Holly's idea much better. Vincent, were you gonna say something?
No, I was going to say, yeah, I'm kind of the same way. As if I have a piece of equipment that don't fit a certain place, I'm going to find room for it. And if it's
Yeah.
not under the stand and it's next to the tank, I mean, my skimmer sits outside the tank and on my reef tank, you know, I'm going to make it work.
Well, that's and Ray's skimmer, Ray's huge butted skimmer that you can see on that link. His is absolutely outside the tank. And you got to figure though, one of the points that RG Reef made is that a 20-gallon might not hold the water in case of a power outage.
Yeah.
And with that's what scares me about putting a lot of equipment like your skimmer outside the tank. Doesn't that worry you, Vincent? Like what
No,
would
I mean,
happen?
there's no way for the skimmer to leak. It's a reef
Okay.
octopus. I mean, it's about 3 foot tall. It's 10-inch diameter. And there's no way for it to leak unless it overflowed. And the only way that'll happen is when my grandson grabs the knob and turns it.
We don't want that.
Well, I got it blocked off now. He's done it once.
Oh no.
One of the biggest problems in sumps, and I love your guys' feedback, like do baffles help? What helps is that I have to make sure my skimmer's off if I turn the tank off, even for feed mode, because you know the water rises and falls based on what's going on in the tank or whether it's running. So how do you guys deal with that?
Well, see, mine doesn't. Now, if I shut down the returns and the water drains to the level of the skimmer, you know, that skims the
Yep.
water out of the tank, it doesn't affect my skimmer at all because the skimmer has a pump that feeds the skimmer, and then it has
Yes.
a different pump that feeds for the air. So it's
Oh
operating,
wow.
so it's completely independent. And so it never changes like after a power outage or anything like that. Everything just kicks back and it works. I mean, it's a nice skimmer. But
Yeah, that's interesting because my skimmer obviously runs on its own pump, but when that keeps going and the water rises for whatever reason, then
it's
it'll,
because it's
the
in the
skimmer
sump.
overflows.
That's because you're
So,
in the sump.
so you're saying outside the sump. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
it's outside the sump and the pump feeds it, and it sits up higher than the sump is.
Yep.
It's on the stand. So the pump feeds the water into the skimmer. It fills the skimmer to a level you want it. Then air is injected through a needle wheel on another pump on the back side of it that creates all the bubbles. And so what happens in my sump doesn't affect it at all.
Okay, so now we're gonna need a picture of that for next week, Vincent.
Okay.
Because that's a great idea because that has been something that's always troubled me. I have to make sure my skimmers are on the same line as feed mode because they have to shut off at the same time or it overflows.
See, when it's in the sump,
Yeah.
you have them set and they work at a certain water level. Well, when
Yeah.
everything shuts down, if you don't shut the skimmer down,
It rises.
that water level shoots up inside the skimmer because of the way the design is, and then it overflows your cup.
Yes,
I just
absolutely.
went and took pictures, so I'll send them to you, Kelly, right now.
Okay. And Zen Ginger said, so random thought. And Courtney, I see your questions. I'll ask them in just a second. But so random thought, what about a 75 over 75? Could the bottom be one half sump, half refugium, and house some corals and or fish that maybe wouldn't go or couldn't go in the main tank? Or is that a no-no? You guys give your thoughts before I talk.
I would say it would be okay as long
Okay.
as the fish were disease free
Okay.
and everything was clean. You could have stronger lights down there on your refugium and corals,
Yep.
and that could still be your sump, but it's not going to have the full level. And unless you're really good at tuning things
Right.
at both
Right.
level, that bottom one's going to have a lower level.
Ray, what are your thoughts on a 75 over a, no, that's okay. A 75 gallon over a 75 gallon and in the sump keeping coral and fish that can't go with seahorses?
Well, I don't see any reason why not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Holly?
You're still going to be looking at, you're going to have selections that are going to be compatible with seahorse needs.
Lower
Yeah,
temps.
I mean, everything still has to be able to go together, as far as the water perimeters they need and that sort of thing. But I don't see a reason not to do it other than I find like the things down low, you're not going to notice as much or look at as much. If they're
Yeah,
on
but it,
ground level,
Unless you design it to boat tanks to be displays,
yep.
you could do
That's
it.
what I was
Yeah, or
thinking.
raise them up like so the tanks are higher. Maybe your sump is not ground level. Maybe it's kind of like my grow out tank is down low. It's not up high like most display tanks are, but it's still at a level where I can see stuff, so maybe
Yep.
maybe
I
that way.
remember my friend Wallet did an amazing, on top same size tank, and it was gorgeous. The only thing I would add to everything that's been said is when because I think you could, as Vincent pointed out, if you're choosing captive bred fish and either quarantining or you trust the seller, that makes a difference. Everything that's been said is great, but I'm just thinking of like Caulerpa in a refugium, and you have to be very careful that whatever you get doesn't release spores. For instance, if you get aptasia in your sump, it's going to be in your tank,
Yep.
period. If you have Caulerpa go sexual in your sump, it's going to be in your tank and it's going to be a mess. So just be aware that, yes, I think you could absolutely pull that off, but just be careful of anything that could still get to the tank.
Those corals that release toxins if they're stressed.
Right.
Mhm.
So
Most of those are
the
going to need
rules still
warmer water.
apply. Right. Temperature and just anything that releases anything or that could make its way. Hell, I have had peppermint shrimp and what was that fish? In my reef, I had I can't think of the fish's name, but he always ended up in the sump. And I couldn't, and he never got hurt or killed or anything, but he'd be missing for a month and then I'd find him in the sump. So just make sure you get things that can't travel. This is what I'm saying.
So I think if you show my pictures, she's saying she likes the idea of more water volume, but hates the idea of wasting such a large amount of tank space on filtration. But if you show, like in my picture, like my sump area is actually multitasking
okay, hang
because
on.
it's in your private
Okay,
messenger.
I'm pulling it up. Here we go.
So that first picture, not the blue one, the other one is the sump.
Okay, hang on. Here we go. Tell me if I'm showing the right picture. Is that right?
Yeah. So you can see that's the sump for my display tank, which is in the living room. So I got this console table to fit the sump, basically. I chose the sump and then I chose the table to go with it. And we put a curtain rod across the front. And then
I like that.
I just got some of those panel curtains. You can see they're on big rings to slide to cover up the sump, like if guests are coming over. To be honest, most of the time I leave it open so I can see what's going on. But you see, I have the skimmer in there in the first compartment, and then there's a couple other compartments where I have my biomedia, and then the return pump and some aquachar in there. But I use that table to keep some of my aquarium maintenance stuff. Also, like you can see, there's a basket up there. I have their feeding kit. There's just supplies that I use that I want to keep handy. The remotes to everything, because I have the lights are on a remote, the pump is on a remote. So I keep things handy there. And then if you look in the next picture, it'll show
sorry. Here we go.
it'll show how my the area is set up. See, this is it between my living room and dining room. So I have a little couch there where I can sit and watch the seahorses, and the sump and the tank are catty corner to each other. So that's why I say, I mean, you don't have to have the sump underneath. I mean, it does take up a lot more space that way. But like I said, I like being able to get into the sump easily and see what's going on also.
Yep. I was just, what I'm doing right now is trying to look for the image of my setup, but I'm not going to be able to find it probably without leaving it.
The curtain you have on the front of it is actually a pretty good idea too. You get
really
more
is.
air.
Yeah, it helps keep crap from getting in there too. Like when we brought the Christmas tree in, because the Christmas tree went in that room, and there was needles everywhere. It helps keep stuff from falling into the sump.
Well, and it's not as airtight either as most sumps,
so
you don't build up that humidity inside the stand.
Good point.
Yeah, so it's pretty open, and then the side that's by the couch is completely open too. So when I'm sitting there, I can see, in the sump and make sure water levels are. I just like having stuff where I can see it easily and monitor it.
Mm-hmm.
No, I like.
No, I like that.
Yeah, I like everything out where easy. See, I like all the plumbing. I like all that stuff. And so,
I hate the plumbing. I absolutely hate the plumbing. So we're gonna need Vincent to show us how to plumb a skimmer outside the tank. What's up, Chimp the Reefer? We love it when you drop by.
I don't like it, but I like to see it because I'm always worried about it. I'm always worried that something's gonna not work or come disconnected.
Well, my skimmer's made to be outside.
Right, I get it.
It was made to be. You can put it in the sump, but it would never. My stand is 36 inches tall. It would never fit under the stand, so it has to be outside. I always oversize my skimmers.
Yep, definitely oversized skimmers with Seahorse tanks. I will take pictures and find pictures of, because I had my reef setup was exactly what you're describing. I know that's not a Seahorse tank, but I did have a refugium. RG Reef suggested you could do a larger refugium section and do it a sponge style refugium with soft corals and some fish that would serve a dual purpose. I kind of actually did that on my reef. I know that's not a Seahorse tank, but I'll try to find pictures to show you kind of the way it looked. And I will take pictures of my setup of the Seahorse tank to show you how my tank sits and the sump sits.
I'm sending you my other one too, the one that's across from me right now, the grow out tank. So that's uploaded.
Gotcha.
Should be there.
If you have small kids, then you got to be careful how you set everything up.
Right. Good point, Vincent. Yep. And I'm trying to find.
There it goes. It just came through.
Okay, real quick. Well, I'll show your picture real quick, and then we'll go to Courtney's question. All right. Let's see. Nope, that's not it. Hang on. I gotta probably refresh. Hang on 1 second.
There you go. Now I see your picture there, so I think you got it.
Okay, this it? Here we go. Sorry. I have to do two things at once here. This picture, Holly?
Yeah, that's the grow out tank. So its stand, that's actually one of those old metal discs, like from probably the 70s, I'm guessing.
Okay.
And my husband cut the legs off it and waterproof painted it. And then I have the same stand for the sump as I do in the one that's in the living room. You can see it on the left hand side on the end. It's the console table thing with the sump underneath, exactly the same. And then I keep supplies in the desk drawers and underneath, as you can see. So,
Yep, I love it.
yeah, there's
Love
a lot
it.
of different ways to do it.
Absolutely. And that's what we love sharing. Courtney wanted to know any tips for dealing with anaerobic bacteria.
You want it. She wants to get rid of it.
Why do you want it?
It's part of the nitrogen cycle. It's your final stage.
Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Well, it's going to change your nitrates to nitrogen gas and whatever, and water. I forget now. I'm no chemist, but it's the final stage to get rid of that nitrite. And if you don't have it, you're going to be doing a hell of a lot of water changes, more than you already need to do for Seahorse tank.
So how did you handle anaerobic bacteria in a Seahorse tank, since you stuck with no sand, no, because usually that's
live rock in the
fine.
sump.
You
I've
live
never
rock in the
used
sump. There
anything
you
but
go.
live rock in any tank. In all my career, like even fresh water tanks, I used porous rock in the freshwater tanks. I've never used any media since 19, I forget, mid 50s anyway,
Mhm.
and never used any media. Didn't see the need for it. Cost money, and it was cheap to get porous rock back then. And then back in '93 when I bought reef rock, it was cheap then. And besides, Canada didn't have laws then that made them strip off the live rock before we got it. Now, if you buy live rock, it's got to be all stripped off, clean, just the live rock, and that's it. But
Right.
back then, I bought all my live rock, and I've been using it ever since. I've never had to buy any more. And so why should I use any kind of a media if I'm
Mhm.
accomplishing my task using the live rock?
Mhm. Makes
Gotcha.
sense.
But
Holly, how do you handle? Oh,
I was going to say, what's the issue with the anaerobic bacteria? I mean, the question is any tips for dealing with it? Because if you have a deep sand bed, the bottom of that sand bed will tend to be anaerobic. Or if you have rocks sitting on the deep sand bed and it gets down in there, you do not want to mess with that anaerobic in that sand bed and disturb it.
right.
And,
Courtney, give us, if you're still with us, give us a little more idea what the question means, because yeah, it's a little confusing. Tell us about your tank and what you're asking, because we can probably help. Just depends on what the question actually means, right? Holly, anything else? Any thoughts?
I don't really know what they're asking exactly, so
But
Right.
I'm curious, in your tanks, Holly, when you have tanks that are mainly artificial, are the bio balls handling the anaerobic bacteria?
No.
Gotcha. No?
they're
Why
doing
not?
something. I don't know what anaerobic bacteria is
And-
in relation. I don't really understand, like I said, what they're asking about.
Well,
Ray,
as Ray said,
yeah,
anaerobic bacteria is the final stage of the nitrogen cycle, and that
Mhm.
type of bacteria turns the nitrates into
Nitrites
nitrogen
to
gas that
nitrates.
gets offed into the air, right? So that's what helps the whole full cycle. What were you going to say, Vincent?
well, in Holly's tank, you really not have the anaerobic because
Right.
all her surfaces are going to have oxygen. Anaerobic is usually
No oxygen.
no
Right.
oxygen, or super low oxygen, and it creates
Okay,
the
that's what
anaerobic.
I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
but live rock has anaerobic because it has all the pores, and as you
Mhm.
get deeper in, well,
Yep.
it's anaerobic in there, and that was
So
the
yeah.
whole reason
Sorry.
for deep sand beds. I mean,
Right.
was the
And
health.
I personally wouldn't do that in a Seahorse tank.
No,
But so that's why we just need more clarification about the question. Why do you want to get rid of anaerobic? Like most Seahorse tanks don't have it unless you have live rock. They just have to do more water changes and whatnot. But why are you trying to get rid of it so that we can answer better? Okay.
'cause they have denitrators that basically work off
Yeah.
anaerobic uh, bacteria.
And I'd have to check, but I guess so, Vincent. I guess like even K1 reactors, they won't have anaerobic bacteria because they're oxygenated too much.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah. Why do you want to get
I
rid of it?
wonder,
That's
so
what we
the
need to know.
bio balls might, because they're just sitting in the water
No,
in the sump.
no, no.
They
No,
wouldn't.
because you still got that water's got oxygen going through it.
It's flowing
Yeah.
through
Yeah,
it.
it's going
Yeah.
through, and you got the oxygen. And
Gotcha.
one of when I first, I mean, I started long before reef tanks, but when they first came out, they came out with a wet dry filter,
Yep. Oh,
and
Yeah,
them
my
things work
freshwater
fantastic.
tank
They
was
did
set
what
up for that.
they did what they were supposed to do, but then they got a bad rap, and they were called nitrate factories because you
yep.
didn't have the anaerobic, you didn't have the final thing, so your nitrates, if you don't have a way of getting rid of your nitrates, they just keep building up and building up and building up. And that's why you
Right.
do water changes to dilute it. And
Mhm.
but wet dry filters, I mean, I still think they're a great filter. You
Well,
just
and
need
That's
it,
to
why
know
I have the bio balls, is because they were originally for that. Because like I said, the
it.
tank I inherited was freshwater, and it had this tiny sump, and it was a trickle
Yeah.
yep.
set up, through the bio balls. And then I just took them, like, after when I set up the sump, I took the bio balls that were in that trickle filter and threw them in the new sump.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it
Big
really,
aquariums still use the wet dry type filters. A lot of them, they'll
Yep.
use that type of equipment. But
Well,
they have everything else to deal with it.
right.
Mhm.
And I would just say, I know I've forgotten your name. I'm so sorry. What was her name?
Courtney?
Charlotte? Courtney.
Courtney.
Courtney, yeah, just let us know more about what you're asking, because even if you're talking about a reef and not a seahorse tank, we can dive into it for sure. But in a seahorse tank, we're doing water changes so often, anyways, that's kind of how we deal with nitrates. And I know many seahorse keepers who doesn't even test nitrates because they don't affect seahorses the way they would coral, right? So just need some clarification on what you're asking us.
So
And let's see.
speaking of questions like that about like perimeters,
Yeah, go ahead.
so can you guys tell me what's acceptable phosphates for the seahorses in parts per? I have a test that runs parts per billion, and I change it to parts per million. I translate it because I think everybody talks in parts per million. Do
Okay.
you know? Can you guys tell me parts
Well,
per million?
when it comes to the seahorses, I mean, for myself,
Hmm.
I'm not concerned with phosphates. I don't test for phosphates. I'm
Okay.
I'm going to do my water changes, and I'm going to get rid of phosphates from water change because the food we feed the seahorses,
Hmm.
one of the reasons you rinse it is because it has a lot of phosphates.
Hmm.
Yep.
You're trying to rinse off as much as you can. But even in my reef, I don't test for phosphates because I have
Oh,
a
I did.
mixed
Because you have
reef.
what?
I have a
Okay.
mixed reef, and everything does good. The only time is when I'm doing nothing but SPS,
Mhm.
then I'm concerned with phosphates. But
Ah.
for an average mixed reef, I don't test for it. I mean,
I just checked well,
Right,
because I haven't checked anything in months, because I normally don't, because the tanks have been running a long time. But I couldn't remember off the top of my head what it was supposed to be. But I came back, it was 98 parts per billion, which translates to 0.098 parts per million.
yeah, I'm
I
not
figured
really.
out, but I don't
okay,
know what that means.
okay, so I need my RG Reef and Chimp to correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a minute since I kept the reef, but I'm pretty sure it's 0.3 that you aim for in a reef. Now, you don't want to have sorry, let me turn this back on. You don't want to have no phosphates in a reef because the coral and such need it, but you don't want them too high. So you guys tell us, because I don't know the answer to the question either.
So 0.098 sounds low to you guys?
Mm,
Low?
Sound kind of
I
high to
think
me,
so.
but
Is it 0.03? Vincent, is it 0.03 in a reef?
it's. I mean, it depends on what you're keeping, but yeah, it's very low numbers. It's but I'm not sure of the exact numbers, how you tell it, but it's very, it's on the lower end.
Yeah, I couldn't
People
remember the
recommend 10.
numbers that are acceptable, because, and I never test, like I said, hardly ever. But my nitrates came back 5, and the phosphates were 0.098 parts per million.
Well, I know
Yeah.
5 in nitrates is pretty darn good, and you just want to stay below 10 on
Yeah.
nitrates. I know that. With phosphate, because
Yeah,
it's
the
been so long,
nitrates
I'm not
I know,
remembering.
because that's the one see. I just got the phosphate test. I got a Hannah checker,
I have
and
one.
Yep.
I got that like months ago, like maybe 6 or 8 months ago. But before that, I was using like the API kit for phosphates, and everybody said that they're not that accurate. So I got the Hannah, but the Hannah one is super fine measurement. I think I got the wrong one, because it doesn't measure in parts per million. It measures in parts per billion.
I bought one many, many years ago when I can't remember for sure what problem I was having. And somebody on reefs.org suggested that I had a phosphate problem. I bought this, and phosphates were very low, but I also found out that Hannah phosphate checker, and I have the fine one for the parts per billion. And I also found out the readings aren't necessarily accurate on that.
Ah,
If you warm up the sample first, then it's better. If you're taking an 80-degree reef tank, then you get a better reading from your sample. If you're taking it from a cooler Seahorse
Seahorse
tank,
tank.
it doesn't necessarily give you an accurate reading. So if you
ah,
warm up the sample first, then it'll work better. But then I never ended up using it because the phosphates were never high anyway. And I never ever checked for anything in the tanks. Why I went ahead and got this thing on somebody's recommendation, I don't know. Like I've never even checked a reef tank for nitrates. And in 20 years of seahorse
Oh,
keeping,
shit.
the only thing I've ever tested for in the reef tanks, other than this phosphate when I first bought that thing, is ammonia when I'm setting up a tank. I check pH at first, and after that, specific gravity, temperature. That's it.
Well, I will say I do think phosphates matter. I know most seahorse keepers don't check it. I have a whole video on phosphates in a reef tank if you want to go watch that. But Holly, I blacked myself out and tried to find my research and my paperwork. I can't do it while we're live, but I'll try to talk about it next week, because phosphates do not coincide. That's not the right word. they don't equal organic. Phosphates are high.
Mhm.
Like that could tell
Then
you
you're
you're
not
not rinsing your
organic.
food. Right. Like,
That's what
right.
I'm thinking. So I kind of like to know, but
Yep.
I don't remember what the range is. And I couldn't find it in my Seahorse book when I was looking. And I used to have it written down somewhere, but now I don't know where it is. And like I said, I hardly ever test. So every now and then I get curious and check it. And then
Yep.
I'm like, okay, now I have this number, but I don't know what it means.
What it means, right? Well, I'm going to go through my books and my documentation, and we'll bring this up next week. Don't let me forget, because
Speaking of organics now,
yes,
that phosphate checker that I bought a long time ago, in the endeavor now to detect N compounds in the
right.
tank using bleach, I'm using the HANA checker to measure or to actually get a reading, because it's a colorimetric reader basically. And while it's specifically made for a range, I think up to 200 parts per billion,
Yeah.
I think, of phosphate. Well, it's still going to give a measure. If you have something restricting the light to get through it, like a color in the fluid, then you're going to get a reading if you can get that sample diluted such that that reader's capable of reading it. Okay, so now this, when I do this free chlorine test, I do it, I forget what strength it is compared to the free chlorine, actual free chlorine test. Like maybe it's half of what I do normally, but with this tester, I can get readings on it as long as I'm using a low enough chlorine concentration so that the color doesn't get too bright on it. But that's on my website for that free chlorine test. Then that's all explained in there and has the pictures of it.
Huh.
And
But
Holly,
that's using something that wasn't intended for, but it works.
Right.
the phosphate by Hannah, there are multiple ones. You got the ultra low, and
Yeah.
the nitrates they have.
Mine's ultra low, so it's parts per billion, like Ray's talking about. So
But
I
if
had to
you
look
too
up
dark,
because it will say 98 on it, which sounds high. But then, most people are talking about it in parts per million, not parts per billion. So I had to move the decimal point over a couple.
but if it ever reads, like I think it's got a maximum of 200 on the parts per billion.
200. Yes, you're
If,
right.
if it's higher than that, it won't read. Okay, so then
Yeah,
all
I
you do
noticed that.
is dilute your sample by 50%. So it's half strength. And then afterwards, when you get a reading, you can double it.
Okay, well, I'm going to say I was trying to find my notes. Brief people in the audience, if you want to comment.
And if you use something like GFO to bring the phosphates down, and you drop it down too low to nothing, then you're creating a whole
Right.
nother problem within your
Yep.
tank. And
Exactly.
I don't know scientifically, but I know from experience I had trouble with Dino when I used GFO and dropped my phosphates all the way down, and not in a Seahorse tank, but in a reef tank. And I don't chase numbers. I don't chase numbers in my reef. I guess I'm older now, and you've done something for so long.
Right.
I just look at my tank, and if everything's doing good, I leave it alone. I'm not gonna.
You learn your tank, just like I always say. Learn your seahorses. That's my new quote. Okay, so we'll talk more about phosphates next week for sure. Sorry, Holly, I don't have a definite answer
That's
for you
okay.
this week.
At least it's out there now.
Yes, absolutely. And Zen Ginger said, maybe a stupid question, but could you use something like Eco Complete that is a more porous rock substrate as media in like a sock or something for those kind of bacteria? And I'm trying to, is Eco Complete the blocks and like the round things. Is that what that is? I thought it was called something
I
else.
don't know what that
BioPure
is.
or something.
Yeah.
I think they're like ceramic blocks that are made for the bacteria to grow.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I've heard about those.
So I'm looking up what was the
I
Marine
think
Depot
Marina
product that
used
was?
Marina. Remember from Australia? She was using something like that. I think I remember her talking about it. Yeah, they were like,
And I used, but I don't know if that's what we're talking
Can't
about.
be
I want to be
totally
very
porous.
clear.
It still has to have that area
Hang on.
with no oxygen.
Right. And if you're talking about, I'm trying to
I'm
remember
gonna
the name. I
Google
don't know
it
what
and then I'll see it.
Okay, time out. Right. Google it, Holly. And I don't exactly know what Eco Complete
Here
is,
it comes.
but I did use.
It's a
Hang on.
substrate.
Okay. Bricks. Okay. So I thought that they were talking about this. Apparently they weren't, but this is what I thought they were talking about. And I have used these. The bricks and the balls. There's I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to show it, but the biofilter
It's
blocks and
volcanic
bricks.
soil. Like it's a
Okay,
substrate.
hang on, Ollie. Okay, hang on. I was just going to say that this is the product that I used in my 90 gallon, and it does make sure you have anaerobic bacteria in the middle. But Holly, go ahead and tell me what you're talking about.
I've just found it. If this is what they're talking about, this is the only thing I see. It's an aquarium substrate made out of volcanic sand, basically.
Right, let me
Does
try
it
to
say
It's
okay for
show a
salt
bigger.
water?
Is this what we're talking about, you guys?
Yes.
Yeah,
As
that's
long as
what
you
I
have
Okay.
enough
found.
depth, as long as you have enough depth to get the anaerobic area, it's just like coral sand.
Yep.
Your upper
But I
layers.
wouldn't put it in the tank.
No, not in the tank for sure. And I used, no, I can't remember the name of it. In my reef tank in the refugium, I used Miracle Mud, which I'm
That's what.
guessing is a
That's
similar
just probably
product.
like that miracle mud
Yeah.
in the refugiums.
But in the question, she said, could you use Eco Complete that is a more porous rock substrate as
Yeah,
media
yeah,
and
that's
like a
what I'm
sock
seeing
or
in the
something.
bag. Yeah, it comes in a bag. So, yeah, it's a substrate. So, it's going to be probably like the coarse coral gravel stuff, coral sand
Okay.
type stuff.
Well,
It is the
the first problem I see is keeping it in a sock wouldn't work because you're changing your sock constantly.
Yeah.
And the second that media hits the air, things are happening. Maybe in the sump, I used Miracle Mud in a sump and it helped in a refugium. Let's see.
What's
RG Reef
in the
said, hey, RG Reef, we need to know what an
Oh,
appropriate phosphate level for an aquarium is.
so he says it's
Please let
not
us know.
saltwater safe, the Eco Complete.
It's a freshwater. Gotcha.
Yeah, that would be the
It's like
first
pebble-sized
question.
rocks. Okay, and I would say that Dan from Seahorse Sources also talked extensively about not using like crushed coral in a seahorse tank for multiple reasons. Food gets trapped, seahorses can injure themselves, so definitely not in the tank. And apparently it's just for freshwater, so not that. I have used Miracle Mud though. All right, other thoughts, you guys?
No, the miracle mud is going to act as like a sand bed. You're going to, I mean, that's what they made it for refugiums. But
And
That's
Seahorse
a
Corner
good
said
point.
lava rock is not good for salt water, will drop the pH. We struggle to keep it high. I'm curious, do you guys test pH often?
I don't test often. It's kind of like the other tests. I rarely test, but once in a while I do just to see
Yeah.
what's going on every few months or so. So I just tested my pH the other day and it's 8.1, which is what it was a
good.
few months ago and a few months before that. It tends to range. Mine goes between 7.8 and 8.2 tops. It
Well, and that
hovers around
fluctuates. Right.
8.1 normally.
Yep.
Yeah, I can,
And that was not a stupid question. We're all
No,
stumbling over it. That wasn't
yeah, we don't
stupid.
even know what that is. So
I know,
that's
right?
a super
Stupid
question.
if you don't ask it and go ahead and do it.
That's right. Ask it so we can investigate.
Yeah,
We
now I
can't.
know something more than I did before. So
You taught us.
yeah,
And I
exactly.
would say that's what we do is if you ask a question and we don't know what the product is or we don't know the answer, we go find out and then we talk about it the next week. So there are
Mhm,
no stupid questions. Please
for
ask
sure.
them all for sure. All right, should we take a break in the play and show Holly's video showing the
Yeah, let's see
Seahorse
something
corner?
fun.
All
Okay, the
that being
sea.
said, many of us have done stupid things though.
Oh, absolutely.
I've done
Um,
plenty of stupid things.
I still do them.
so
Yeah.
me too. But we're gonna really quick show the video that Holly sent. We talked about this last week. Seahorse Corner inspired us clear shower curtains. Everybody wants the yellow chains for seahorses to supposedly turn them color, but these clear shower curtains, the seahorses love hanging on them and they just make an excellent little addition to a tank. Holly's seahorses figured out how to use them to swing from one feeding dish to the next, right, Holly?
Yeah. Oh, and
All right.
RG Reef did say phosphates should be 0.05 to zero point 0.1 in a reef tank.
Where did
So
I
I'm
get
all right. I'm in
three?
the range.
But where did I somewhere
I
I
don't
knew
have a reef
three.
tank, but if it's okay for a reef tank, it's okay for the seahorses.
Right. And I'm gonna go find my notes because I swear there was a three somewhere. But let me find this video real quick. Excuse me. All right, here we go. Sorry, it's taking me a minute. I don't know how to make it big. Here we go. All right, hang on. All right, now let me share. And this is which seahorse, Holly?
Oh, this is Scrappy Doo. And it was actually Candy that figured this out and taught him. But
So he's eating. He's hanging on the clear.
yeah, so I hung those near their feeding station. And Candy, the one that's eating next to him, is actually the one that figured out you can hang on the shower curtain ring and swing around and eat out of both feeding stations. So
Oh, jeez.
Scrappy Doo picked up on it next. And they're the only two that do that. Sadie doesn't really get on the rings and do that. She get on them now and then, but she doesn't swing around like these guys do. But Candy
That's
and
so
Scrappy
funny.
do. And yeah, they use them to their advantage, definitely.
I love it. And when you talked about it, I pictured him swinging from one end to another, but this
Oh
is
no,
still
not
cool.
that.
Okay, and while we're here, what was the other video? Let's just show it real quick.
The other video, yeah, is that's Sadie. When she was a baby, I got this video of her hunting. I used to let the brine shrimp grow up.
Hmm.
And when I was converting them to frozen food, they also got live adult brine shrimp, to help them get used to eating bigger foods.
Right.
And so in this one, she's hunting the brine shrimp, and you can see she takes it down just like a dog would and gives it a good shake. And
Oh my gosh.
she injures it before she eats it. She takes a nip out of it. And there's another one, it's funny, that looks like it's trying to distract her.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a good little hunting video. It's pretty fun.
Yep. And she's trying to figure out, can I fit that in my mouth? How do I do this?
Well, and when you
Uh,
see her eat it, she like it's as big as her head. So she'll like
Right.
spit it out and suck it back in a couple of times before
Yep.
she gets it down. But yeah, look at her just zoning in on it. And it almost looks like it's teasing her.
Yep.
And then there's that other one trying to distract her, it looks like.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's funny.
I wouldn't think the brine shrimp, think anything, but
Interact. Right.
it
Yeah,
sure
they
looks
have a
like they
brain.
are.
You said they
That
don't have a brain,
almost
Vincent?
Yeah.
she injured it, and then see after she injures it, then
Oh
she
my
goes back and
gosh.
grabs it, and now she's trying to choke it down. But you
Holy
can see
cow, what a little hunter.
she'll like spit it out. And the
But
way
that's
I
the
know it's Sadie is because this was my first batch where I had 5 survivors and I kept the biggest one. She was always the biggest one. So I sold 4 and kept her. And that's how I know it's her because she was the biggest one. And I remember it was the biggest one that caught that shrimp. But look at her.
He's like, I will choke this down.
Yeah,
I will.
it takes her a few times. See how she spits it back out
Yep.
and then sucks it down again. She's like,
I like
Does
I
she
like when
eventually
two of
get
them.
it?
I like when 2 of them go for the same piece at the same time,
oh yeah.
Oh Lord.
and the suction looks like it's going to hurt them when they suck each other right in the mouth at the same time.
Oh
Yep. Look at her. She's like, get
Yeah.
my gullet. Come on.
yeah.
Quit squirming. That is amazing. They are hunters. They are
she
hunters.
spit it out again. Look at she's
She
like,
can't get it down her little throat. But she's
Yeah.
determined.
Yeah. And to show how small she is, I mean, look at that's gutter guard that she's in front of.
Yep. Tiny.
So she was probably an inch or so here.
That's pretty cool.
What a fighter. I want to see her
Yeah.
get it down. We're going to keep playing.
Yeah,
I want to see her
she
get it down.
does. She does.
And it's really incredible. It just shows like the personalities and the strength of each individual. Because when
Yeah.
I put large adult Artemia in with Fry that little,
Mhm.
they would chase them and look at them, but they never tried. She attacked that thing.
Yeah, and she followed it for a long time. And there were other ones swimming around, but she beamed in on that one and followed it. And then, just like I said, just like a
Tilt your head back, Mama.
yeah, just like a hunting dog or a wolf or something, she disabled it first. She
Yep.
gave it a nip, and then when it was injured, she went after it.
Well, and seriously, you have
Did
no
she get
idea.
it finally?
I think so, but you have no
She
idea
got
how
it.
much. I know, but you have no idea how much like protein and not protein, but how much good stuff they get
Yep.
from live feeds. I mean, that's
And
excellent.
that's the reason I like the broadcast feed, even frozen, is to make them hunt for the food.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier for me to just broadcast feed and let them go after the food. I could never keep it inside the dish.
Me either. Holly's the dish expert for sure.
Spills it, but he's so spoiled. Dandy will not eat food off the floor
Do you
next
cut
to
the
his
floor?
dish. If he spills the food, which he does because he'll flutter it, and the food spills, and then he just looks at it. He will not eat food off the floor of the tank. I have to suck it back up with the turkey baster and put it back in his dish for him.
Do you have to kill the power in the power heads or anything in your tank when you feed them?
On the display tank, I turn off all the power when I feed.
See,
And
now
the
that's
other tank, now in the grow out tank, I followed Ray's advice because I broadcast feed in the display tank. And what was happening was I was getting a lot of food, when the pump came back on, it would be lost in the overflows. And so now I give them a few minutes with the pumps off. I unplug both the pumps. And so they get a few minutes, of calm eating. And then after a few minutes, I turn on the internal filter so it blows stuff around, but it's not going down the overflows. And then after that, then I siphon and then I turn the main pump back on. But in the display tank, they only eat out of their dishes because I have more stuff for food to get stuck in. So I don't want it to get messy in there, really. And so I turn the pumps completely off in that tank. And then I siphon and then I turn stuff back on.
See, and that's the one thing is, if you're going to shut the pumps off, you got to make sure you turn them back on.
Oh, yeah.
That's the reason I don't like doing that.
For me. It's a habit for me. It's not I never forget to turn off the pumps.
But no, amen. What, Ray?
I have timers.
Yeah, if you have timers, but I mean, I get sidetracked.
Yeah.
And so I always made a habit of not turning things off, because if I get sidetracked for some reason, I don't want to forget.
Oh, no, their feeding is a whole big to do, so I don't forget anything. That's my concentration time.
What, Ray?
I use the timer first to turn off the pumps, because all the pumps go into that timer. So I turn off the pumps with that, and there's a couple power heads that are left running to keep the stuff in motion and that. But all the rest, the overflow, the return pump, all that stuff, and power heads that have quick filters on them, they go off. When I turn it off, I turn the dial on the timer until it hits the stop, and then about half an hour later, it turns everything back on automatically.
Well, that's definitely the way to do it, because you guys, if you haven't heard the story, you haven't been on Wine Wednesdays or seen my videos, that's how I lost my precious pair of Barbori, is I was on vacation. I had literally like 12 tanks running. So I had extensive equipment on the bigger tanks, but the Barbori tank, it was a new species I was keeping. So it was in a tank without all the, timers and all that stuff. Yeah. And my mother-in-law had done a great job for a week. She had done because I did videos to show her, this is which tank you feed first. Here's how you feed the babies, because I had babies back then. You have to get the Artemia and do this, and you have to rinse the mysis for them, and all the steps. You have to turn this one off. So if you do it in this order, you'll not miss anything. And she did it perfect for a week while we were in Florida. And then the final day when we were on our way, she did everything and she got distracted and she forgot to turn the bird back on. And by the time I got home, they were gone. It was horrible, awful. And I mean, horrible. I could, nothing you can do, but.
The one thing I don't like, well, I have the feed modes. I have DC pumps with feed modes, like RG Reef's talking about.
Yep.
But they don't allow enough time. It's 10 minutes. And so what I have on the display tank, and I love it except for when I have a power outage, I've got a key fob, that turns it on and off, the pumps. But when the power goes out, it stays shut off. You have to turn it back on. And so the other night, we had power would be off for like 5 minutes and come back on. So everything would come on except for the pumps on the display tank, because they're on that thing. So I'd have to get up and turn them back on. And then the lights come on when the power goes back on. They go to full brightness no matter what time of day it is, and I have to like unplug them, plug them back in. So yeah, some of the stuff is a pain. But I used to use the feed mode on my grow out tank. But what was happening was the pumps had come back on, on the feed mode, and this stuff would float and end up in the sump, go
Gotcha.
down the overflows. So now when I just use the internal filter instead of the other one, it blows the food around, but it doesn't go down the overflows. It's not going anywhere but in the tank. So
That's been my trick too. Turn off the main pumps, but have something internal blowing it around. Absolutely. And Shyla said hers are trained to eat from the dish as they don't chase food, but I find they eat better when I target feed them, but I don't have time for that. I hear you, Shyla, but you guys,
yeah,
why do you think some seahorses won't chase food?
none of mine really do.
Oh, see, mine do.
The ones in the grow out tank, I mean, even though I broadcast feed, they're not swimming after it. They're opportunists. They'll eat it if it's next to them, or if they see something they want that's a ways away, they'll like glide over to it, but they're not physically chasing it like prey at all. And the ones in the display tank, like I said, they're so used to being fed in their dishes
Pampered.
that
I was
that
gonna say I've got.
yeah, that they won't even eat it if it's on the floor. They give it a
I have to say
concerned
this
look.
to
They'll like look at it, but they won't eat it, which is it's all right for me because I don't
right,
want them to eat spoiled food. And I
right.
don't want the tank messed up. If it wasn't for Dandy being a special needs seahorse and having to eat on the floor, no food would really spill because they don't spill much out of the feeding station.
Right.
They sit there and eat their food. Maybe a little
You're
bit spills, but
you're not wrong, Holly, but you love your seahorses and you do have a handicap seahorse. So they do get pampered. Mine do too.
yes.
Seahorse Corner said I just rinse and throw in the tank. Don't shut anything off. I lose some defiltration, but it's minimal. I've
Yeah.
had different tanks. Like in my rectus tanks, I throw the food in. I usually turn the feed mode on, but I keep the power heads moving or the
Mhm.
wave makers moving so that it moves about. With my Barbori tank, I had to target feed them one piece at a time. They were so spoiled. And do I believe that they could have been trained? Like if I had had tough love, that they could have been trained to chase food? I absolutely do. But
Mhm.
it depends on what you want and what you're doing with your seahorses. If
Well,
you're
look
Well,
at
willing to do the
Sadie. She
work,
used to chase food. I mean, she was willing to take down and hunt that big old brine shrimp.
it's like
right,
Seahorse
But
Corner
now
said.
she's out of a dish.
It depends how they're raised and how they're used
yeah,
to it.
Mhm.
Like my juveniles, all I have to do is walk up to the tank
and they're
and they
there.
all come rushing up to me.
Mhm.
Yep,
And then I just dump the food in there and they chase it.
Yep.
It settles down to the bottom. They pick it off the bottom. I dump more in. They all come back up and they follow it down. And that's the way they eat. And they know when they see me, I'm feeding them.
Now mine will chase the turkey baster. They don't chase the one mice, but they'll go after the turkey baster. They'll follow that. I've one girl, she'll swim when I feed them. She'll swim from anywhere in the tank to try to get the turkey baster.
well, RG Reef said maybe with being captive bred, the prey drive is being bred out. I don't agree. I do
No.
not agree. I think it depends on how they were raised, as was
Mhm.
said. And so, like, if I would just suggest if you buy seahorses, ask the
Mhm.
breeder what they're used to, or ask the
Because
store what they're used to.
because
Because if you go
even
ahead,
captive bred start out chasing prey.
yep,
Yeah.
I mean, they
Mhm.
start their life chasing
Absolutely.
prey. It's an instinct, and they'll continue doing that as long as you keep putting it in
Mhm.
there where they have to chase it. But when you train them,
They
because you're
learn
basically
what you
training to
teach
eat out of a dish, and
them.
so
yep.
Mhm.
when
So
you
that was my point. if you were to buy seahorses from Holly, you're going to need some dishes because they're used to eating from
Yeah.
dishes, right? If you're
Until
going to
you
buy
break them
from
with that.
Or
right, break them of
the
it.
ones in the ones in the grow
I don't like
out
dishes
tank
either,
now,
but
well, like those, they know all the ways to eat. They'll eat whether you broadcast feed, they'll eat out of a dish, they'll eat if you target feed them. I taught them all the ways, so they know all the ways, but they have preferences, and
well,
it's
and
basically
let's be honest,
you
Holly.
can teach
Listen,
them
this is
anyway.
but listen, this is what Cheryl said to me, so I'm going to be honest here. Cheryl said to me when I was breeding and I had fry and I had such a hard time weaning them onto frozen. She said you need to use tough love.
Mhm.
And in your case, you have a special needs seahorse. So it's different.
What's
And
different
you
in
want
that tank? Yeah, I mean, like I
yeah,
said, I feed the 2 tanks different ways,
right.
but,
So
there's reasons for that, but they'd figure out any way. I've never
exactly.
had a seahorse not eat, they'll figure it out.
Right.
I mean, when I
But
first
the
had
point
the
but the
pair
point
of
to that
seahorses I had didn't know how to eat out of a dish, I taught them that. You
right.
you know?
Absolutely. I don't like dishes because I think it makes them lazy. You know what I mean? Like they're being fed their gourmet meals, but if it works for you, it works for you. You know what I mean? Whatever works for you. A lot of people love the
Yeah.
dishes.
Yeah, you
A
know what's
lot of
going to
people.
happen next?
They hang out there all that, but mine don't hang out at the dish. They
You
eat
know
and
what,
leave,
Holly?
you know. So
You know what's going to happen next? They're going to want a remote for the TV.
All
yeah,
right, let's not
they
beat up on
probably
Holly.
already do.
Right? But that just shows they're your family. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
No, I got to
And
say, I watch your videos or pictures every day. I mean,
beautiful
beautiful
seahorses.
seahorses, man. Your tanks are always top notch.
Yeah, I pay a lot
Absolutely.
of attention to them. But they pay a lot of attention to me too. Like I've
Yeah.
told Heather, like on my real busy days working, I mean, they'll watch for me to come home. Candy, especially, she'll see me walk by and I try to sneak through the house because I want to get out of feeding them, until the next morning because I'm tired. I'm like, oh, you're not getting any food till breakfast. But she'll see me if I walk by and then she'll start doing her dance and begging. And I'm like, oh, I feel
Yeah.
bad. It's too late for dinner.
And Ray's over there saying, I wouldn't have any of it. They eat and don't
No.
have a treat. Dang it.
I tried dishes, but I had too many that would broadcast feed, but they wouldn't feed out of the dish. So I figure if I've got to broadcast feed a tank for some, I'm not going to bother putting them in a dish for others because they would all
You
eat broadcast, but some of them wouldn't eat in a dish.
I'll
Well,
tell
and
you
Cheryl,
with
wait,
the
wait, wait.
fly what I did.
Wait, hang on. Cheryl made the point that with broadcast feeding, or even not target feeding, with broadcast feeding, they're getting more exercise, right?
Mhm.
They're keeping that prey instinct. They're chasing the food. I do think it's a better way to feed, but go ahead, Holly.
I started when I was raising fry. I got them all dish feeding as soon as I taught them to eat frozen, pretty much. But they were eating, the way they figured it out is I use those little clam shells.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I don't know if it has, I mean, they were always clean, so I don't get this part, but they attract the live brine shrimp, are attracted to the clam shells.
Oh, interesting.
So they learned to eat that the live food would gather in the clamshell and be easier to eat. And when I put the frozen food in there, it got them eating frozen food faster because they knew
Interesting.
that shell meant food.
Yep.
I
I
I
would say
know it just
again, I would just say again, when you buy seahorses, ask the person you're buying from the way they were trained, because that's as Holly said earlier, seahorses will figure it out no matter what. But if they're trained from fry to
That's
eat from
gonna
the
be
dish,
easier.
that's what they're going to do.
Way they
The
know.
best way. If they're trained to broadcast feed, that's what they're going to do.
And
So
the
just
way I
ask.
always told people, when I sold seahorses, no matter how you feed them, the ones that I had, they know the turkey baster. So
Yeah.
whether you're using the turkey baster to broadcast feed, because that's what I use broadcast feeding too, I just squirt it all over the place. They know the turkey baster has food. So whether you're broadcast feeding or out of a dish, or if they're sick or something and you need to have them eat right out of the turkey baster, they'll do it any of the ways.
I would
They
say that when I finally get fry again, my seahorses will eat broadcast feeding, period, because I just feel like that's so much easier instead of.
Let me ask, is that Heather? Seahorse?
Yeah, that's Heather.
Yeah.
And Ray, wait, guys, Ray had to go. So good night, Ray. Thank you for coming. Go ahead, Vincent.
Good night, Ray. Heather, I think I talked to your friend. I told her I'd probably be shipping pretty soon.
He's shipping to me first, though.
Yeah, first.
But
I'm still selling them.
So should she still keep sending people your way?
I mean, she can, yeah.
Okay. Heather, you might have missed the beginning because I think you came in halfway through. He's been sick. Vincent's been not well. So if he hasn't responded, I'm sure he will. But anyways, guys, we've had Productive Wine Wednesday. I'm almost out of wine, so we're going to have to end it soon. Anything else crucially important that we have to talk about?
Oh, Shyla's asking about if ceramic hamster dishes are safe. Ceramic is safe for salt water.
Okay.
I've used stuff like that. And she says she has a see-through dish, and whoever gets confused and tries to go through it. Mine did that too, because I used to use soap dishes, plastic soap dishes, and I've had that, and took them a while to figure out, but they did. I had my goby though. Funniest thing ever. My goby used to go into their dish and clean up afterwards.
Oh, nice.
Until he got stuck in a dish because he could not figure out to go up and over it. He was trying to go down or through the sides, and he was freaked out for a while. He had no idea how to get out of that dish.
No, I had to. I
will sometimes go. I have, now the solid color feeding stations. Candy will still. Sometimes she hitches, and her body will be underneath the dish.
Yep.
And she doesn't understand that she needs to come up and around to get the food.
I have a video.
And it's not even see-through.
I have a video of me trying to or starting to consider training on feeding dishes. I'll try to find it and link it in the description. But basically, little Cheryl and another seahorse figured out how to get into, because all I had was like a box type ceramic thing, and it was clear.
All kinds of things.
And then I had one of those Omega 1 clips clipping it to the side. They got in it, they ate, and then they couldn't get out. The seahorses couldn't figure out how to get out because it was so tall. And that's when I stopped trying to dish train. And I do think it should be considered, their activism, like how active they are, depends maybe on how they feed and all that stuff. I don't know. We can dive into it more.
That's because my seahorses are generally pretty active with each other, but I mean, they're pretty social creatures. So if you have probably more of them, they're not going to sit at the dish all the time because they're more interested in other things like each other, looking at stuff. And they do all kinds of stuff. And they know, like mine, I have specific feeding times for them. I try to, when I'm able to. and they know, and they'll come to eat at those times, and then when they're done, they leave, so I don't really have
But
that issue.
do
I
you
do
see
have
them?
something funny. When I first gave them the soap dishes, the clear soap dishes, the first thing they did, both Dandy and Candy did this. They went and laid down in it like it was a bed. And this was before I put food in it. I had just put
Mm-hmm.
them in and they were investigating the new thing in the tank. And both of them, they took turns, but that's what they did. They went and laid down in it like it was a bed. And, and they're like, oh, this is comfortable. It's very
See,
strange.
Holly, I love you to death, and your seahorses are amazing. But I think you just have weird ass seahorses. I do, because I've never seen a seahorse lie down ever until yours. And Seahorse Corner said, I don't use feeding dishes, but I've tried a bunch. Best ones I found were a cereal bowl. They
Mhm.
hopped in, ate the food, and it didn't blow out, and they didn't get
Yeah, 'cause
stuck, I'm
it's power.
guessing. That's
Yeah.
interesting. I don't think there's anything wrong with any method that you
No.
choose to use.
Mhm.
I just think that when you buy seahorses for the first time, ask what the methods used were so that you can cater
Mhm.
to your seahorses or not, I
Or
mean,
not, or teach them another way. Like
Well,
I
I
said,
think
they
exactly.
will learn. They will
I think the
learn.
baster is a good, I mean, I don't use one, but I mean, because my adults always went for the turkey baster. As soon as
Yep.
they
Mhm.
saw it, I had a little fluorescent green tube.
Mhm.
As soon as they saw that, they'd come out.
They knew.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I videos ask wait, it's Seahorse Whisperer part 2 or something. It's my daughter tried to do a Seahorse Whisperer video for herself. I'll try to link it. But anyways, you can see in the video where she walks up to the tank and they just come flooding towards her. And they were all broadcast fed. They knew flood
Yeah.
towards her. She's going to feed them and the food's going to be everywhere. So again, just depends on what you want. If you want
Yeah.
seahorses that can eat from the dish, find a
Mhm.
seller that has those seahorses
What's good
or
about that?
train them differently.
What's good about that is when they are broadcast fed, when you have company come over and they go by the tank,
They're
they
crazy.
start moving, they get active
Yeah.
because
They think
they're
they're gonna get fed.
fed. Yeah.
Well, yours probably do that too, though, Holly, right?
Yeah, mine do that too. Yeah. Well, there's some that like Candy is apparently the ringleader
Mm-hmm.
because she'll come and do the begging for on behalf of everyone else.
Right.
And then sometimes Scrappy Doo does it.
Hmm.
It's usually not all at
All of
once.
them.
Sadie does it too, but it'll be one of them is apparently the elected volunteer or something that
You're
so
you're too loving of a mother, Holly, because all of the seahorses come rushing when
they'll
I come up to the
they'll
tank.
come to the dish, but they won't dance. Candy does the
Mm,
dance.
to
Scrappy
ask for
Doo
food.
Scrappy Doo will do the dance now,
And
but
if you
he
guys
didn't
are,
at first. He learned from her, and then so sometimes it's his job. That's kind of how they handle it. But the others will go. They'll all come up because the dishes are right in the front of the tank. And then Dandy's little dish, of course, is on the ground because he can't swim up. So he'll wait and put his face in his dish and wait for the food to get there.
well, I think that you are an amazing seahorse mommy, Holly. But for anyone new, typically you should be able to throw food in and they'll eat it and they'll chase
Yeah.
it and all that stuff. She's a loving mommy who is taking care of the seahorses that she has. I mean, that's it. And she's done an amazing job. But I would just say, usually you get just ask the breeder what they're used to is all I can say.
Mhm.
But cereal bowl is a good tip. And you guys, I'm gonna have to end it for tonight. I do have to work tomorrow. Anything else that I missed that we need to talk about? Seahorse Corner said if she sent you to Vincent and he doesn't have seahorses for sale, Seahorse Savvy is a good alternative for sure. And yeah, I think we're going to cut it with that. We've got lots to research for next week, and I will announce any guests ahead of time, so watch for posts. But for tonight, let's say cheers. Are we ready, guys? Sorry. I got to pee. All right. So happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. Cheers.